Hi, my name is Tej Singh, Chief Operating Officer of Iapetus Holdings. I'm an entrepreneur, and we're diving into the world of podcasts. Welcome to the first episode of Trees and Lines, where Phil Charlton and I sit down and dive into discussions surrounding utility infrastructure and this burgeoning industry we call vegetation management. It's a platform that we're going to springboard from, where we talk to industry leaders, utility executives, and we talk about a lot of the themes that are facing the industry. Both Phil and I were pretty nervous doing this, given this was our first one. But once we got on a bit of a roll, we couldn't stop talking. So hopefully you guys enjoy, and there'll be more to come. By the way, Phil, just so you know, I wore something very American today. As a Canadian, I wore this very beautiful representation. I thought about it, and I was like, should I wear something from West Virginia? And I said, for the University of West Virginia, I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to support Phil in that way. So Phil, we're here to talk about stuff. We're going to dive in, go a lot of different directions, and we're going to see where these conversations go.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Tej.
Like, you entered kind of utility, vegetation management, the tree business, what's called the tree business, 30, 40 years ago. Sorry to date you, but called 40 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Why in the world did you do that?
Probably a little over 40 years ago. 1978, I dated too. So it's interesting. You go into forestry school because you don't know what else to do and you like to hunt and fish. I think that was my way I got to forestry school. And one day I was in graduate school at West Virginia, and I got a chance to work with some true legends of the industry. I was there with Ken Carvel, and I was working with him, Harry Wyatt, and a couple of guys that everybody in the industry have heard of, Dr. Bramble and Burns. And they were doing research on power lines in New York, and I got to go along. I got to tote their bags, really. But I also got to do the computer work, the data analytics on those projects, which were really sort of the earliest IVM, or at least among the earliest IVM projects, even before it was IVM. So from there, I was in the utility industry, couldn't get work elsewhere. Dennis Holowitzki, I just give you a little background, because I see it as a start of this thing.
Yeah, you really did. When we sat down and you were contemplating retirement, it was really fascinating to learn about your background, and you've effectively seen all the life cycles and all the capital that's flown into the space, and utilities' commitment to, supporting their infrastructure. I had asked you, I was like, Phil, what we should do? You should write some white papers and you should do all this stuff. And I thought about it. I'm like, I wouldn't read it. And I'm not sure a lot of people are going to take the time to sit there and go through documents. And, our world has changed, right? In the way we communicate with people. So, you and I were like, maybe we should do a podcast. And then we're like, oh, we don't know anything about that.
I was going to say, you said, let's do a podcast. And I said, what's that?
So here we are. I guess setting up the stage for what we believe, we're going to try and do this over, multiple conversations. And our hope is to engage the industry, leaders in the industry, different stakeholders, and bring them into the conversation and talk about what we think is the direction of where we think utilities are going, where the investments are going, how technology is going to factor in, thinking about environmental initiatives as it relates specifically to utility vegetation management. I'm pretty excited. Again, we have no clear idea of what this is going to look like, but I think we do want to tackle things in a more direct way. We realize that when you talk to our people and how they got into this industry, there's such a randomness to it.
Oh yeah. Nobody goes to school to get into this industry.
Well, that's why it's insane to me that you went into this industry that early, got a PhD, really kind of formalized your education, but it really is something now that we need to think about. This is real work. This is really interesting stuff, impactful stuff that's very relevant today, and it's becoming more relevant, as we move forward. This is something that we should formalize in terms of how you get into the sector and how companies are grooming these young minds and sort of drawing people into this industry, because it's just, to me, it's fascinating. It's almost like engineering, right? There's so many disciplines.
Well, it's sort of interesting, Tej, because, my career's been inside the industry. And you said 5 years ago you stepped in. And I think I have found that the most fascinating, because everything we talk about, you sort of look at from a different angle. Different context from your background. I don't think you told us anything about your background. So, just share that with us, because you do see things differently. And I think that's really a healthy thing.
I have an engineering background. I have an electrical engineering background, and I was putzing around as an intern, at utilities. I worked in some coal plants and some nuclear plants. And I realized I didn't want to be in a power plant for the rest of my career, but I was interested in the commerce related to energy. And so my career took a very nonlinear sort of path, but I ended up essentially in energy finance trading roles, where I was evaluating, the commercial side of what these things were going to do and their outputs. And I was, as an entrepreneur, my very close friend, my business partner today, our CEO, who founded the company, who also touched energy from the legal side, and then went on to the New York Mercantile Exchange. And he started this company, I guess, 15 years ago. We were in the space, right? Our clients were all the same clients, right? Whether it was on the energy services side, financially related, and just the way we do stuff, Phil, is like, I kind of describe us as professional problem solvers. You put us in any sector and we start to dissect the relevant stakeholders and how things should go, and what doesn't seem right and what could be better. And we usually do that in a very organic fashion, because it allows us to take our time to actually understand, what the problems might be and who the people are, and build that level of connection so that we can really dive in. And often that doesn't happen overnight, right? That takes years. And, once we started dipping a toe turned into a foot turned into, we were just diving headfirst into the ocean of like utility world. And as we spent time and we're doing little projects, we figured out that, hey, like, we've got some very talented people, and we started pivoting to, as the wildfires started becoming more prevalent in California, that organic positioning and just being kind of ready to sort of support the client, the utility. Once you sort of like figure that out and the right opportunity in the market presents itself, that's when the Iapetus sort of brainchild or methodology kicks in, because then we're like, okay, now we have to solve a complex problem. We have some tools to do that. We have some people to do that. And then the business architecture kind of kicks off. So when I sit down with people like you, and your peers, you're right. I do see it from a very different perspective. And what we try to tell our people, and you've heard me say this multiple times, is that, we think of risk at a utility level, not at a tree level. But it's about that happy marriage of both, What do you think, Phil, is in the next 5 years, what do you think is going to be the most important area of focus for this sector, for this industry?
The industry's just been changing at such a rapid rate. I'm not sure there's just going to be a few. Everything that we see emerging, technology. When I started, I bought the first computer, one of the very first computers in the industry. And here we are today. We have so much data. And data is going to be what drives us, and how we collect it is, I think, going to be discussed for the next many years. So I think that's going to be interesting, just to see technology. You've got the environment. You talked about the perspective of stakeholders, and, a fair amount of our system is investor owned. Investors have always played a big part of that, but boy, it's no longer just about returns. And I think that's driving behaviors, and those of us in veg management are going to have to address that or accommodate it. Regulation, that'll always be something that's emerging and has to be dealt with. So,
I was talking to a client the other day, and they talked about how the workforce 50% of it could be retiring over the next 5 to 7 years. And I thought about that. I'm like, oh my God, he's right. And what are we going to do? It's not like this industry has a huge pipeline of developed leaders in the space. Like, how do you think this is going to play out in terms of just the people side of it?
Well, the workforce, the frontline worker, they're just such a rapid growth. And you have to have the management people behind it to support it. And it just has outgrown or grown faster than we've been able to keep up with. They've done a great job with the resources they have, but for the long run, it is probably the biggest challenge out there is where are we getting the people and how are we getting them trained quick enough to manage it as well as to do the work. It is going to be exciting.
Do you think then, do you actually think this will become like a university major? In the next 5 years that, major schools across the country will have like a vegetation management sort of focused degree, or, arboriculture degree. Like I know colleges and some universities have that, and maybe I don't actually. Maybe I'm not aware of the depth of that. I don't believe that it's formalized in most institutions.
Very, very little has been done in that. And it's just amazing. When I started, handful of people involved, and today there's thousands of people. And yet we don't have the universities turning them out. They always turn, a lot of them will go through forestry, but instead of turning it into utility veg management, they turn it into urban forestry. We have the jobs, the demand, the budgets, and yet they're training people for urban forestry. Hopefully that changes. I'm really excited about the program that was put together and is being offered by the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point. I think that is a great way to help the people that are coming out of whatever natural resource background, don't know the industry. It really is a way to quickly start to bring them up to speed. So I'm anxious to see that thing continue to evolve. I think it'll be one of the answers, at least.
Do you think, how much of this story do you think becomes a global discussion, right? Obviously, we see what's happening in Australia and in different parts of Europe as well. And it's not just about the fires, it's about the infrastructure, right? The decaying infrastructure, our reliance on this big, clunky 500 kV type stuff. How much do you think this is what we're seeing here in the US is gonna really explode over there in terms of these programs?
Yeah. Well, when you say US, I think US, Canada, and maybe to a lesser degree, but hopefully ever increasing Mexico, the North American market.
I try not to say Canada because I don't want Craig to give me grief.
So Australia does have a lot of similarities. I think a lot of opportunities to share. It is a unique market, so it really is taking ideas and figuring out how do they fit in. One of the mistakes I made with ECI when I led that operation is you think that the solutions here fit elsewhere. The concepts fit, but it's making them work that is a little trickier than you think. So I really think we have things that we could do with them, the folks there.
Specifically what though? Is it just like culturally? Is it like, because it's not that Australia, obviously both English speaking countries, like, is it a utility sort of lens that's different? Is how they think about capital risk management? Like what didn't necessarily translate specifically?
Yeah, I'll just give you one example. I went to Northern Ireland. We thought we could run a program. We had such success building programs, reducing tree-caused outages. Go to Northern Ireland with all of our great solutions and put them on a budget, scheduled circuit maintenance, and their outages skyrocketed. So everything we did wasn't working. Why was it? Well, they didn't do any live line work. So every time they touched a tree, they took the line out of service. So a stupid little thing like that we should have caught right away. It wasn't until we saw the results so we didn't apply the right concept, or we applied the right concept. We didn't do it very well at first.
When you identified that, then do you then you go back and have a conversation with the utility and say, hey, listen, by the way, like we do live line work in the US and these are the reasons like we feel like it's still safe because these are the metrics around it, or it was like, no, this is Ireland. This is we take everything out of service and then we do the work.
Well, it was both a matter of helping them understand that it can be done safely. But it was also the reality is that that's not in their short-term future. So maybe we can begin changing culture, but we had to change our culture and attitude. How do we accommodate their operating environment?
Do you see this industry completely turning over where, the technology is completely running the industry, or is it always going to be like, you're going to have a good amount of like dedicated human capital in the space? Or do you think the technology is actually going to take this over, and you're going to need fewer professionals to really be managing this process?
That's a real good question. And, it may mitigate that or reduce the need or the rate of growth in human capital. I just have trouble seeing it replace it in anytime soon. Trees are a unique beast. It does take people to evaluate them. There's a lot of interaction with people. I don't see the machines doing that as effectively if we're going to really continue to build customer satisfaction, risk management. I think people are still going to be involved.
I think with technology, Phil, we see a huge benefit of, especially with beyond visual line of sight, distribution networks and even like transmission lines that are in tough terrain, not having to put people at risk and being able to utilize that technology, not just to map the system, but identify points and problem areas using LiDAR and other technologies as well. Right now, we see it as a tool, something that you incorporate as part of your program, not so much as a way to replace the program, because I'm not sure that's possible. There's also like the industry with the FAA is still going through this. They're trying to figure it out. Right?
Sure, yeah.
Airspace is always pretty complex. So, but I've been very impressed with some of the utilities out there that have done a good job of committing to the technology and being pretty innovative. NextEra comes to mind. I mean, they're to me just like setting a standard in the marketplace with technology and how they think about their program. Obviously, they have all kinds of risks with the hurricanes and the storms, and they've got a pretty aggressive vegetation, whatever you call it, landscape or fuel to manage, that kind of deal. I always find it interesting calling trees fuel. I know that's a term that's used in the industry. I just can't get my head around that. But
that's out in the fire area.
Yeah. One thing that, Phil, I heard you talk, I heard you speak sort of at, I can't remember if it was at an industry event or your real focus on the environment. I know you care a lot about making sure that this is not just about, clipping trees and protecting the infrastructure, but to make sure that we're protecting our environment, which is, it's a balance, right? It's making sure that people are safe, yet trees are an important part of our ecosystem. So from an environmental perspective, what do you care about? And how should the industry be thinking from an environmental perspective?
Yeah. I'm absolutely convinced that the environment as a driver for what we do is only going to become more and more and more important. The wildfires, that's just one example. I think if you come to the East, people will say their biggest risks, are oftentimes around environmental issues. So it really is, an important job that these utilities have to really find the balance. They got to provide for the safe and reliable service, but people care about the trees, so there's those aesthetic values. Whatever we do to them, has other impacts. Whether we're on rights of way, we can do things that hurts the environment, or we can do things that builds the environment. I have a friend that really has changed my vision on this in the last several years. He always says, when you're looking at the right of way, don't look at it just in terms of what you have to kill. Think about it in terms of what you can create. And in terms of the wildlife habitat, the environmental benefits that we could drive, we can do it without greatly increasing our costs. I believe the other stakeholders are going to appreciate it, and they're going to demand it if we don't give it to them. So I see no end into our need to pay more and more attention to the environment.
When you were kind of leading the UAA, I know you grew the footprint very materially during your time there. What were some of the challenges? What were some of the things that you got done, right? Some of the goals that you accomplished, and what were some of the things that fell flat that you wish that you had solved, but the industry is just not there yet?
Yeah. Of course, worker retention, recruitment, training, those are, big things that I think we made great progress, particularly on the management field management side. We helped with Butte College using some funding from Pacific Gas and Electric, and the other utilities out there pitched in. A lot of contractors, consultants, everybody came together and helped build that tree worker training program. It's a pre-apprentice program. I think that is one that will change the industry. We worked with the group out of, again, Alberta. Neil Thiessen sort of led the way in the development of the program offered by University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point. I think that was a true success of ours. We actually got more engaged in the writing of the best management practices, more involved in the ANSI standard committees to make sure that those were the highest that we developed, or the highest standards for the industry. I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting, but a lot of changes, and I think they've been all for the good.
You planning to stay connected with them as well?
Yeah, I have some real interests. When I was with the UAA here on conference calls, I think we had 14 working committees meeting at least once a month, roughly. Some of them more than that. Once I got off all those conference calls, I sort of liked that. So, but I love that group. They're a good group, great staff. Safety committee's been doing some really wonderful things. They have a stewardship on rights of way committee. It's sort of, I have interest in all of them, and I don't know where to get plugged back in yet. I've sort of taken a month or two off. I do support them and will get more involved.
You're like my street cred. You're my vegetation management almanac.
Well, but I do think it's healthy that you come from, they all have things in common, and that they had the 40 years of experience in utility vegetation management. So that's why I think a fresh look offers some unique avenues for us.
That's why we wanted to do this, right? I'm definitely not an expert in the content, but I wanted to engage the industry in a little bit of a different way. I wanted both of us to do it, right? I wanted you to sort of be able to talk to the different stakeholders in our industry. Because, look, as a business person and as somebody that is part of growing a company, a business, introducing culture, I'm always interested in how not only are we going to solve problems, but how we can build sustainable solutions, right? I love our sort of diverse thought. I'm excited about where we're headed. I'm also excited to engage folks. I like talking to people at the utilities, other executives, other people who are running kind of peer-like companies and how they're thinking about it, other technology services, Well,
Tej, I don't know about your previous industries you worked in, but I'll tell you, 40 years working with veg managers, it's a good group. It is really a good group in our industry. They're passionate. They care. They're smart. I think you will enjoy getting to know them and working with them. We've talked about it for a long time. It's nice to do it. And okay, what are we doing here? And how could this work for us? I really think endless opportunities.
We have the opportunity, Phil, to have an impact on some of the biggest issues that are facing our community, our society today, from the environment to energy reliability, right, to employment, creating employment opportunities. Just the fact that we could help develop an entire industry and how we interface with young people, leadership, especially with content that is this is not just high risk work, it's important work. I'm excited about this journey, and I'm excited to also document this journey with people so they can listen in and say, okay, wow, that guy Tej doesn't know anything about a tree. Phil's a god. He's a tree god. So yeah,
I have to change my business card, put that on there. We have so many great industry folks that entered the same time I did and are leaving the same time I've been leaving. Just imagine if we can capture some of their input, where they see the future and what they want to leave behind. And we have so many emerging leaders. It'd be fun to talk to them and where do they see it and how are they going to meet the challenges.
This is going to be fun. We got over that anxiety of looking at each other on camera, but I think this is going to be awesome. I'm super happy that, we're doing it. And I think there's going to be more fun days to come. And I can't wait to kind of build on this podcast. So.
Very good. Well, thanks for taking me along with you, Tej. This is going to be good.
All right, sir. We'll talk again soon.
Okay, very good.
That's it for this episode of Trees and Lines, brought to you by Iapetus Holdings. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. If you have any questions or comments on any of our episodes or ideas for topics or guests, we'd love to hear from you. We'll chat with you soon.